As an adult, I would say my biggest fears are spiders, heights, and trying to back out of a tight parking lot without getting into a minor fender bender. As a kid, my biggest fears were spiders, heights, and the Klasky Csupo logo. Growing up, it seemed like a lot of things terrified me. Things like the sound of the vacuum cleaner, staying over for the full night at a friend's house, my weird friend showing me videos of the rake on YouTube on my Wii the one time he ever came into my house. Looking back, I wish these were still my biggest fears, considering how innocuous they are, but at the time, it felt like everything was out to get me specifically. I was never even into creepypastas, but for like a year straight, I was convinced that I was going to be Jeff the Killed in my sleep, or Five Nights at Freddy's was standing just outside my bedroom door. Sometimes the most off-putting things in my life were the more abstract, and that's what I wanted to discuss today. Let's talk about the inherently horrifying yet completely innocent things that scared kids who grew up in the 2000s. I had to start with subliminal messaging because now that I really think about it, the reality of subliminal messaging is actually really scary, and I don't think I should take it as completely lightheartedly as the rest of the stuff I'm gonna talk about. To be more specific, as a kid, I had an older neighbor who I was friends with, and our day would mostly consist of hanging out in her computer room and watching YouTube videos and trying to make some of our own. Computer room. Remember those? Among the various Keyboard Cat, Celebrity Phone Number, Wasabi Productions, and crappy Bart Baker parody videos were Windows Movie Maker slideshows of people pointing out subliminal messaging in cartoons and songs, ranging from mildly inappropriate jokes meant for the parents watching along to hidden devil numbers, naked women, and phallic objects in Disney movies. These videos would show off every instance of subliminal messaging across decades worth of content from Disney, Nickelodeon, and Cartoon Network, all tied together with those cheesy movie maker fonts and transitions. For those who don't know what subliminal messaging is, it's any sort of stimuli that gets processed by the human brain subconsciously. For example, name any color of the rainbow. Was your color blue? If so, I just successfully influenced you on the subliminal level by lingering on the blue frames of this background graphic for a few seconds, displaying it longer than the others and causing it to become a relevant detail in your brain, even if you weren't consciously aware of it. If your answer was a different color, either your subconscious didn't pick up on it, or this was just a really bad example. What other horrible things could I be imparting on your subconscious? How many people did I convince to buy arms? That's probably the worst fate I could have ever damned anyone to. In your daily life, you will come into contact with many sources of subliminal messaging, predominantly from social media. The biggest, most prevalent form of subliminal messaging in the modern day is the pushing of content promoting incrementally unhealthily thin bodies, with social media being tied directly to a rise in eating disorders in young women. On an arguably less serious note, simple advertising on websites like TikTok, Twitter, and the very website you are watching this video on take advantage of ethos, pathos, and logos to subliminally convince the viewer to buy or support the product being advertised. While you might not consciously be aware of it, your midnight craving for some Taco Bell, or that horrible Hyde-like monstrous urge in you to download League of Legends may have been influenced by an advertisement or other such post on social media that you saw or heard prior to having thoughts about that. Whoever this blonde guy is that they got in League of Legends, he's making it real hard for me. In the context of videos like the ones I'm talking about, subliminal messaging took the form of the inclusion of age-inappropriate themes and imagery in children's media. By the perspective of those making these videos and the concerned parents who took certain examples a bit too seriously, these supposed subliminal messages were encouraging their children to become sexual deviants, Illuminati cult members, or worst of all, irreligious. The Illuminati ones in particular were the more popular ones, and the subject that I think gave me the most unease among these hidden messages. Like, even at the ripe age of maybe 9 or 10 years old, I was like, what are these cult messages doing in the shows I like? Now that I'm twice that age, I have enough life experience and knowledge to have realized that 9 times out of 10, these quote-unquote subliminal messages are far reaches made by ultra-conservative or ultra-religious parents that eventually took on their own life and basically became self-fulfilling. Like, maybe the meaning wasn't there before, but now enough people think it was there that it has basically become a fact of the world, even if said fact has been mere fiction all along. Obviously, if you have the cognition to think critically about the information you take in, like I said, 9 times out of 10, these examples are just visual gags and jokes among crew members that more than likely came from a place of stress on the production members, or the desire to put a little bit of, hey, I know that SpongeBob is annoying to your adult sensibilities. SpongeBoy here is gonna blow up what looks like a condom just for you. Isn't that funny? Into the show for the parents watching with their kids. Why it was always something sexual that was supposed to be funny is a whole other conversation in and of itself, but I do think there is plausible deniability for a lot of these examples. The notion that just below the surface of the family-friendly Disney movie I was watching laid the word sex in big letters, or god forbid a joke about anthropomorphic car boobies, for some reason gave me what I can only describe as the ick as a kid, as in like an unexplainable overall discomfort, pit in your stomach type of thing. It still kind of gives me the ick to think about getting the ick from watching these videos, but whatever I feel is immediately destroyed by the abject humor that comes with watching anything made with Windows Movie Maker in the 2000s. Can't watch a Movie Maker video without thinking about the Xbox 720. I remembered not really liking to watch these videos, mainly because they did scare me. The big Illuminati scare of the late 2000s and early 2010s was mostly to blame for why I felt this way, but now that I know that even if a cult like this is real, I am much too poor and lack the celebrity to ever worry about being indoctrinated into it. Nowadays, the only subliminal messaging I personally really have to steel myself against is seeing a very cute character from a game and resisting that download button like an apple in the Garden of Eden. However, and this is the biggest takeaway I want for you to have from this segment, is that while those 9 times out of 10 may be complete jokes with no real ill intentions, we've obviously had examples of people in high positions in the production of children's content who have taken advantage of said position and put weird messaging and themes in their stuff on a noticeable level. So in the end, what I'm trying to say is that I can't, in good faith, entirely dismiss subliminal messaging as one of those childhood fears, because it is, at best, an unavoidable element of consumerism, and at worst, a weapon utilized at the hand of people who may desire to do harm to their audience's psyches, whether they themselves are conscious they're doing that or not. I think the presence of quote-unquote adult humor being more and more prevalent in children's media is an overall side effect of the world in general, becoming less and less age-appropriate for children to grow up in. But I also don't think it necessarily means that there's one big bad villainous cult steering the conscious towards spreading evil. The idea of subliminal messaging is still scary. It's just scary for much different reasons now than it was when I was a kid, because now I'm much more conscious and the effects of subliminal messaging feel so much less cartoonishly evil and more real. That is the main takeaway here, so the rest of the video will be completely stupid, innocuous things to be afraid of, but again, I thought I better give my deeper 2 cents about this particular topic.
Like the memer.
Whew, eat spicy goodness. Like a
Hi, hello. Hi. These are my bugs. These are my very awesome epic bugs presentation. I found these bugs. These are cool bugs. Thank you.
Task. Porta boy, fix your game.
Salads and more at AM PM. Too much good stuff. Dungus!
The idea of a beloved network you've grown up watching ending up shutting down and ending broadcasting is a sad enough thing to think about, but actually witnessing the channel's final moments seems like something more eerie and disconcerting, like watching someone take their final breath. Channel shutdowns are what it is called when a television network ceases broadcasting over a particular channel. In some cases, it is possible that the company in charge of the network could have an alternative channel or multiple other channels they're broadcasting over, and the closing of one channel doesn't exactly spell out the end of the entire network's content. For example, as of writing this, the Nickelodeon network in the United States currently broadcasts different sets of content over the Nick, Teen Nick, and Nick Jr. channels, but has had other additional channels in the past that have closed, such as Nick Games and Sports, which featured a sports and game show niche, and Noggin, which broadcast content catered to a preschool audience. International channels also fall under the umbrella of channels controlled under a single network. For instance, while there is a simulcast for Cartoon Network in the United States into English and Spanish translations on 2 separate provided channels, there also exists a specific set of Spanish-dubbed Latin American Cartoon Network channels, broadcast additionally to Mexico and Brazil in Spanish and Portuguese dubs respectively, and may have different overall content than the broadcasts in the United States. These sorts of channels are always treated as something of a niche, since if an executive looks at a set of their network's channels and views that the English-dubbed audience is much bigger and therefore more profitable than a smaller, more specific Portuguese-speaking audience, down comes the hammer and off goes the Portuguese channel, which is why an alarming amount of channel shutdowns are for US-owned networks' foreign-dubbed channels. If any of that made sense to you, you might already be a channel shutdown fan, or at least familiar with the concept. It never happened often on a large scale in the 2000s for a channel to abruptly shut down nationwide, so the scarcity of the occurrence, I think, made it even more creepy. Most channel shutdowns would occur in the very late night or early morning, when fewer viewers were watching. This meant that the channel ceasing broadcasting abruptly in the middle of the regular programming would just plunge you into near complete darkness and total silence, with nothing other than the 2000s classic tube television buzz to comfort you in the sudden isolation. I can see how there would be something deeply, distantly creepy about that, I think. The concept of channel shutdowns has been plagued with a number of what-ifs and creepypasta fanfiction about Cubo slaughtering its characters because the viewers let this happen to them or whatever that was supposed to be. But in reality, the occurrence of channel shutdowns is more so a hobby that people have, tjese being the one to obtain footage of a network channel's last broadcast. In hindsight, it seems like channel shutdowns were only really off-putting because of the former, that people would fake videos of popular kids' channels shutting down and make them 10 times creepier than it would ever actually be. Again, I do think there is something to be said about how when some channels would shut down, there would be some kind of signal tone or general operational sounds accompanying the shutdown. Many channel shutdowns would be abrupt, unplanned cuts away from the programming being shown to a simple message box saying something along the lines of, "This channel is no longer available. This thing you've come to rely on for so long, this part of your daily life, a small piece of a larger, familiar daily routine, is being removed from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And also you have to be alone in silence now." That is all in concept some of the creepier things I can think about regarding channels shutting down. They do still happen, but more often than not, they're more well-rehearsed, planned for, and proper channel-branded graphics are created for the channel to cut to direct you to where else you can find the content you watched the channel for in the first place. However, in the days of 2000s television programming, networks broadcast over analog channels, which were more like radio signals than they were proper streaming like we're familiar with now. Analog channels were broadcast over radio waves, and changing channels on your TV was similar to tuning a radio to a different channel. On a radio, some channels might come in super clear, where others might sound almost fuzzy, more quiet and distant, degraded, or have overlap from other channels' signal. This was also more or less true for analog TV channels. Nowadays, channels are broadcast using more direct streams of code rather than easily interferable radio signals. At least I think, from what I'm reading. I'm probably not the best person to ask about anything technological. The last channel to use an analog signal before the switch to digital signals was mandatorily made standard by the FCC was in 2009.
Okay, the date is June 12, 2009. This is the last broadcast.
1 minute.
This is the last thing broadcasted in analog TV.
Watch, it's gonna be like porn or something like.
It's gonna go out. Fucking last thing broadcasted on analog TV was Sex and the City. Historical note. Stupidest show on earth. Except here it comes, it's gonna go black. Or at least it should.
But some channels in various televisions were capable of using digital starting as soon as the 90s. A lot of less profitable channels were just chosen to cease airing instead of making the switch, which is why a number of channels have documented shutdowns from this year, like this video recreation for Nickelodeon Japan's official shutdown, which is so minutely documented that next to no footage of the actual shutdown exists. By the 2000s, I was still growing up with dated tech and things my family had owned 10 or even 20 years prior and still had, which is why I'm familiar with analog channels and grew up watching them. The reason why analog horror is such a big thing is because of things like these analog channel shutdowns being so scary. Digital channel shutdowns don't cut to loud, abrupt static and nothing left to comfort you about reruns of The Simpsons abandoning you in your time of need. Analog shutdowns would scarily terminate the entire signal, whereas digital shutdowns just cease the streaming of video content or replace it with non-programming for a certain duration before another network or flight of programming takes that place. In the 2020s, as entertainment steers more and more away from traditional television broadcasting and more towards streaming, many digital channels are being closed because of low viewership. And like I mentioned before, being a quote-unquote niche dubbed channel in some sort of non-English language, even though general television viewership worldwide is seeing pretty impressively low numbers compared to even just 10 years ago, with the Disney Channel seeing an abysmal 100,000 viewer range, down from 1 million in 2014. And fuck whatever bootlicking tech bro dick writer made it so Grokpedia comes up when I'm trying to do my research. What is most scary about channel shutdowns is the unknowns of it, and the notion of lost, undocumented shutdowns that could be potentially hiding some kind of secret.
Like porn or something.
As small of a chance as that might be. Their occurrence so early in the morning, and the nature of analog shutdowns being jarring, sometimes loud shifts from proper broadcasts to empty static makes them scream, "You were not supposed to see this, you were not supposed to be here," in a way that creates unease. Kind of in the same vein of anti-piracy screens or something like that. This is probably the only one on the list that I would say really didn't have much substance for me specifically to be afraid of as a kid. But what do you think? Did a channel shutdown ever scare you, or was it just the creepy vibe bubble the internet built up around them? So much of horror and the element of fear relies on your senses, with the primary sense of sight being favored over so much else in the process of building something truly terrifying. The pulse-raising effect that hearing something outside of your door in Five Nights at Freddy's has is only heightened by your ability to see the animatronic standing in the window. The disgust you feel finally seeing a monster in BioShock is strengthened after only having heard audio recordings of whatever they were before. And no fear is greater than seeing with your own two eyes that Weezer is actually a real band composed of real people and is not just an urban legend. Some sounds are just scarier when put to a visual, and vice versa. As a kid, you're kind of only exposed to age-friendly, soft, simple visuals. Nothing is particularly fear-inducing about stuff like Blue's Clues or Barney the Dinosaur. Maybe the first iteration of Barney was pretty scary. You aren't expected to be subjected to things that might scare you in your younger ages, which makes it all the more memorable when you finally are. Ask anyone who grew up in the 2000s, and they'll probably tell you that the first thing they remember scaring them was some kind of logo at the end of a completely innocent TV show they watched growing up. Whether it was the visuals of an end-screen logo or the sound, or a combination of both, few fears hath stuck with a child of the aughts longer than that of a creepy logo they remembered seeing after Jimmy Neutron or Rugrats. There are entire icebergs in Wikipedia entries solely dedicated to weird, scary, or off-putting logos that, in hindsight, aren't scary at all. Whether it's the cobbled-together disembodied face of the Klasky Chupa logo, the freaky-ass one-eyed monkey of the DNA Productions logo, the bald Valve guy who may or may not be looking your way right now, the weirdly graphic aka cartoon logo, or the ear-splitting, soul-shattering, pants-shitting glare of the THX logo, everyone has one that scared them the most. I watched my fair share of Rocket Power reruns as a kid, and admittedly did not enjoy seeing the Klasky Chupa logo at the end of an episode. I wouldn't say it kept me up at night exactly, but I did get that sort of unease from it. I think people are really only scared of these things because of their juxtaposition with things they would have been seeing it attached to. Like, Rugrats doesn't often employ the use of overtly goofy, gritty, somewhat off-putting visuals, so the fact that the show ends with one kind of roots itself in your brain as being wrong or different compared to the rest of the material. Even if the logo itself isn't even really that scary, it's just so out of the norm from anything your young mind has seen before, and it makes you feel a little scared. And like the THX logo, you probably saw it when you went to see your first movie in theaters. It was a new experience for you. You've never been subjected to loud theater quality speakers, and certainly not an intentionally extremely loud and full tone meant to test those speakers. These sorts of cases have pretty good reasoning to be scared of these logos, and logos adjacent to them. Like, some people will say that the O Productions logo scared them too, but it's probably just because it was played with the DNA Productions one. What I personally don't get is like 99% of the other logos that some people report being afraid of. Stuff like the Deke logo, or the Rankin Bass logo, or the Screen Gems logo. The only thing I can give stuff like this is maybe just the low quality, or something about the specific tone or key of the little jingle that they play along with it. Actually, now that I say that, I kinda see what people are talking about with those. I watched a lot of the Monkeys though, so the Screen Gems one does nothing for me. Like the channel shutdowns portion, I think some of the fear surrounding certain logos comes from the rise in analog horror content, retroactively making your brain expect there to be some kind of scary connotation to a logo that otherwise has none, because of the genre's use of similar logos replicating these sorts of visuals and sounds. Take the William Street logo, for example. William Street was a studio that worked in-house with Cartoon Network, mainly producing shows for Adult Swim. The logo used at the end of its productions featured a blurry, stamped image of a studio building, accompanied by a rolling drum and the sound of metal striking metal played twice. The otherwise empty, lackluster logo creates a sense of unease, mostly because the sounds don't match the visual. The sounds used feel detached from what you're seeing on screen. The whole concept of not knowing is what's making you feel uneasy about the entire logo. Like, this image with no sound means nothing. If you just showed this image to me and told me it scared you, I would help you get psychiatric attention immediately. But with the sound, I can see why the logo is strangely spooky, adding to its intentionally ghostly nature. In reality, the origins of the noise used in the logo go back further into Cartoon Network, or rather Warner Brothers history. The sound originally went along with the visuals of the Mark 7 Limited logo, a studio that also produced content for Warner Brothers in the 60s. With the accompanying visuals of this logo, the sound is a lot less scary because you have visual context on screen for the sound. It's not some disembodied weird noise that could be anything lurking beyond the edges of the TV screen. Some of the unsettling elements of logos that otherwise aren't scary could possibly come from that sort of thing, like your brain doesn't associate the logo you're seeing with the sound being the proper visuals. Even though most logos don't have a historical explanation for where their audio comes from, like the example I gave, something about the combination of visuals and audio just seems weird or wrong to the viewer. I don't know. Maybe if it were most other people in the Rankin Bass studio, they would choose something that sounds a lot less like a school lockdown announcement is about to happen. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? I hope someone else gets that or I'm gonna sound insane. Anyway, scary logos are kind of fascinating to me, even though there isn't a whole lot to actually say about the concept when you get down to specifics. Maybe one day I'll think about doing a proper video about them. There are many instances of episodes of TV shows being pulled from the air because their content deemed to be poorly received by the show's audience, or too inappropriate for the show's audience, or something about the context of the episode had a negative impact on or negative similarity to something controversial happening in real life. There's tons of reasons why an episode or multiple episodes of a show might get pulled off of the air and later become lost media. And hearing rumors about on the playground about episodes of a show that had something too wrong about them to be shown on TV was an intriguing and equally unsettling thing to experience, whether those rumors were true or maybe rather blown out of proportion. Like a lot of the other things on this list, banned and lost episodes have taken on a new life in the form of being the basis of multiple different creepypastas, most famously the Red Mist lost banned episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. In real life, however, many banned episodes of TV shows are usually pretty innocent in hindsight, and all they really have wrong with them was just airing at the wrong time, or having a joke or visuals that went too far over the lines of what was expected from the show, or being a little too offensive politically in some cases, stuff along those lines. I.e., most banned episodes of TV shows aren't some meta-horror fourth wall breaking cursed tape found in the attic like you might be led to believe by the internet or your friends. What made banned episodes kind of scary and why they're in this video is, again, because of that factor of not knowing. For the most part, there was no instant access internet to just quickly look up what some episode of a show was pulled for. The only way you'd really know is if you happened to be in that perfect window where you could catch the episode when it aired, if it ever got to air. And maybe if you were lucky, there would be some iota of news coverage on it eventually. Some banned episodes were pulled from broadcast plans before their air date even came around. Like, you might hear that an episode of SpongeBob was cut for a violent gag on screen, but you want to see exactly how violent it was with your own two eyes. But because there's no immediate access to some other person's taping of the original air date of the episode, you can't see exactly how violent it was with your own two eyes. What a shame. What's more scary about some banned episodes are the conditions surrounding why they were pulled in the first place. Like the infamous episode of Pokemon that was pulled because the original broadcast in Japan reportedly caused minor to middling seizures in some photosensitive children who viewed it, and caused a mass hysteria event that replicated similar photosensitive reactions in children with no history of seizures. Again, this is one of those things that, as you grow up, becomes something that really isn't scary at all, but more so an interesting topic that you're intrigued to explore. Banned, pulled episodes of TV shows are really fascinating to me, even if they don't end up having the creepy oomph that your Dead Barts or Happy Appies might have. Something about some instances of them is kinda like a car crash you just can't look away from. Like the fact that multiple episodes of 30 Rock, which I will not be showing, made use of scenes of their characters doing blackface. It was the 2010s. If it wasn't funny the first time, I'm more than sure it wasn't funny the other two times. The nastiest, greasiest, fattest white supremacist you can imagine just laughed so hard he gave himself a heart attack over this. Bad timing and weird, sad coincidences are sort of interesting to me for some banned episode cases, like Mr. Robot's first season finale being pulled because a scene had unexplainable coincidental similarities to a murder that would take place earlier in the day that the episode was initially meant to air. An episode of Bubble Guppies from 2013, the heavily featured and praised police officers, was pulled from rotation in streaming services in 2020, following cases of police brutality ramping up in the United States starting in that year. And a second episode of Pokemon was banned from airing after the September 11th attacks because of a sequence in the episode that shared some similarities with those attacks. Some episodes of shows get pulled preventatively, so people, mostly kids, don't end up copying something dangerous they see in the episode, like another episode of Pokemon being banned because of it featuring multiple guns as part of the episode's plot. Similarly, multiple episodes of Ren and Stimpy were pulled from their airing because of excessive violence. There's a myriad of banned, pulled episodes of shows that were treated so for every reason under the sun, but none, in reality, are as scary as the whole connotation of being banned makes them sound. So as an adult, it's less like, oh, an episode of some cartoon was banned, I bet it was for some creepy reason, and more usually like, oh my god, how did they even think that was okay to write? There is only one instance I can think of an episode of television being banned for being directly disconcerting to children, which is the very well-known episode 847 of Sesame Street, which features the Wicked Witch from the 1939 film adaptation of The Wizard of Oz. Following the episode's initial airing in 1976, many parents wrote into Sesame Workshop, complaining that the depiction of the evil Wicked Witch in the otherwise tame, gentle Sesame Street scared their children. The episode wouldn't be seen again for 43 years, until clips of it were shown off during an event celebrating Sesame Street's 50th anniversary in 2019, with the only other available footage of the episode being provided to the Library of Congress. In 2022, 46 years after the episode's initial airing, the entire episode was mysteriously leaked online by an anonymous user, and is easily accessible on YouTube. There's really nothing to be afraid of about banned and lost episodes, and while some of their contents are understandably frightening to children of the 2000s, I personally find the topic overall to be really interesting, and there's literally hundreds of examples of the practice to talk about. Last but not least, the last example is by far the scariest on here, solely because they are often made to be scary. And by they, I mean PSAs. And I don't know why I worded this way. PSAs, or public service announcements, are short pieces of informational media meant to inform the audience about some sort of issue. The issue can be as broad as teaching the public to be a little more accepting of others' differences, or as specific as attempting to spread awareness about the causes of wildfires. With Smokey Bear gaining nationwide popularity after first appearing in PSAs informing the viewer that only they could prevent forest fires, which became his slogan, and then was later altered in 2001 to say, only you can prevent wildfires, warning against practices that may lead to any sort of fire being started inadvertently. This attention-grabbing slogan and the visuals used in the PSAs, mostly that of the Smokey Bear character, made these advertisements memorable to the many generations that grew up seeing them. Don't get me wrong, not all PSAs are as well thought out as most. You wouldn't steal a car. Why would you take food out of Paramount CEO's mouth? Even though the Smokey Bear PSAs are known for their recognizable mascot and the stern, informative tone they usually take on, most other PSAs similar to that notorious anti-piracy one are known for attempting to employ more of a scare tactic to get viewers to really resonate with the message they're trying to send. Most PSAs warn you against the dangers of using drugs, with the "this is your brain on drugs" PSA being one of the more memorable ones.
This is your brain on drugs.
This one is more on the tame side, obviously. That's not my brain, obviously. That's a egg. What if I want my brain to feel like a fried egg, huh? Maybe that's not a great example, but there are other PSAs that really don't hold back on the visuals. Stuff like that one PSA with the deflated girl warning about how you pretty much become a husk of yourself if you use drugs. See, this one works. I would never want to look like that. It's creepy visuals like this that a lot of 2000s PSAs, and even ones older than that, would use pretty heavy-handedly. And like, these would air on children's networks. Like this once lost anti-drug PSA that aired frequently on Cartoon Network. The PSA itself is pretty cartoony, and it's not really scary to anyone now who grew up seeing it, but it goes back to what I said, that seeing something with gritty, intentionally dark and grungy visuals makes it a memorably stark contrast against whatever show you're actually watching. PSAs about general human safety can get pretty disturbing, if not entirely graphic, like the fire kills PSAs that question whether or not you'd truly be prepared in the case of a sudden house fire. I also know of some Canadian work safety PSAs that are like infamously graphic, but I won't show any. I want to sleep tonight. For the life of me while writing this, I can't think of any PSAs that actually creeped me out as a kid, but I do know of some that other people have discussed at length on the internet. Like the Little Lungs PSAs that were anti-smoking advertisements that used a pretty unique stop-motion style, but used grotesque depictions of lungs as the characters, focusing specifically on a pair of lungs who, I guess, has smoked all his young life, and is always falling behind his lung companions because of the poor health brought on by smoking. But no, it's not enough to just show the guy struggling. That's not scary enough. The kids won't cry to their parents if we just show a pair of little lungs choking on oxygen between Steven Universe and Adventure Time. He needs to die graphically in every single PSA. I don't care if he's a pair of clay lungs, this is gore. Don't smoke or you'll get hit by a train. Those particular PSAs are a bit on the newer side, being aired in the 2010s, but the campaign behind them, The Real Cost, has been a thing for years, and has made quite a number of other memorable anti-smoking and anti-drug PSAs. The first ones I remember seeing with this tagline and from this specific campaign took their specific identity pretty literally, like in this one that shows someone paying for a pack of cigarettes with a chunk of their skin because one of the costs of smoking is having good skin health. Others go for depicting smoking as distinctly bad things, like this one that turns a cigarette into basically a contract that you forfeit your normal life to if you choose to smoke. Or this one of multiple, where a pack of cigarettes is turned into a nasty monster that chases after people. Man, if cigarettes looked like that, I'd hashtag run like hell. Did you know that cigarettes have hashtag 7,000 chemicals? I don't mean to make fun, I'm sure these were effective for someone out there. I know I've never touched a drug in my life, and I guess I can't say it's not because of these PSAs. In hindsight, none of these are really all that scary, but it's like I said, that juxtaposition made you dread seeing stuff like this during commercial breaks. I just now considered that, like, I think the fact that these PSAs would air on a channel more than once kind of set up this unavoidable dread every time a channel would cut to an ad break. That sort of dread can be really scary and unsettling for a kid to have to feel, especially younger ones. I understand why that feeling would stick with someone into adulthood because of that. The overall deliberate creepy vibe of so many different types of PSAs just left a lasting mark on a lot of people who grew up in the 2000s. And maybe if those creepy PSAs made you remember the message they were trying to impart in you, that might have been a good thing. Anyway, that's it. Let me know what you thought was the scariest thing growing up. I don't really dip my toes into exploring creepy, spooky stuff very often, so this was kind of fun to write. But at the same time, I get the weirdest residual subconscious anxiety over stuff like this, so I probably won't sleep anyway. Like, my brain used to make me get scared over Shane Dawson conspiracy videos, so if that doesn't say a lot about me, I don't know what does. It's fine, it's for content, I'm doing it for the content, I love YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is your brain on drugs.